Hey guys, welcome back. Jesus loves you. So, I was watching an awesome movie called Twins of Evil, 1971 horror movie. Enough said. You know it's going to be awesome, right? Those are the best films, those made in the 1970s. And it's made by Hammer Production Company. It was a film production company in the UK, and they put out a lot of like old school campy horror movies. My favorite kind, B movies. That's right. So I want to tell you guys about this movie and look at it from a theological lens. Essentially, this movie is a Christian movie. This movie is more theologically accurate than The Chosen. Admittedly, Dallas Jenkins, the one who made The Chosen, says that it's about 10% based on the Bible. So he outright admits it. A lot of these newer Christian movies are not biblically accurate, okay? And they don't even claim to be. The movies from the 70s, the Jesus movies back then, they're solid. They're on point. I mean, if you watch the movie Godspell, it's totally on point. They basically go through the Gospels. I believe it's the Gospel of Matthew that they play in the movie, okay? So I like watching these movies, especially religious-themed horror movies, which are honestly the majority of them. Okay, most of them talk about God and the Bible, Revelation, Satan, demons, spiritual warfare, right? These are topics that come up in these movies, whereas other genres, I don't even hear it mentioned, right? So I think sometimes the church, which is very watered down at this point, right? I've never heard, and by the way, I'm not necessarily promoting watching horror movies. If you feel like it's not something you should do, then you should follow your conscience on that. I have not been convicted that it's wrong. In fact, I've been convicted that it's actually helpful to sharpen my walk and especially help me learn about spiritual warfare. When I read the Bible, I see all kinds of horror in it. Murder, right? Plots to murder, death, destruction. Horror is part of life, right? And it's also part of the Bible. You could argue that the Bible is partially a horror movie. Right? There's a lot of blood flow. There's a lot going on there that would mimic those genres. So this movie in particular, yes, it's R-rated, so there is things that, you know, maybe a Christian shouldn't be seeing. Again, that's up to you. It's obviously not a children's movie. By the way, I just saw the movie Minecraft. That is not a children's movie. Please don't let your kids see that. That would be my advice for a Christian, right? Children watching movies is one thing, but a grown adult who's been through stuff, right? And I understand also not watching horror movies if it's going to trigger you to want to sin or trigger a trauma response or trigger fear and you don't want to be fear. Totally understand it. Again, I'm not promoting like you should do this, but I did it and I learned a lot of things and I want to share that with you. So this movie, as I said, was a Christian movie. It reminded me of the movie The Witch, which was also a straight up Christian movie. Yes, they showed demonic stuff. Yes, they showed the devil. But who wins in the end of these movies? God, good. The good people win, right? The demons are looked at as being bad, right? And these are a lot of times stories about Christians. So The Witch was totally about a pilgrim family, a Calvinist Christian family that battled with a demonic spirit within their family. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. A lot of these movies, especially the religiously centered ones, are like this. So this movie, Twins of Evil, was also like that, right? So the story, you had this band of pilgrim witch burners, Christians who were zealous for the Lord, but they were going about it in the wrong way. Now we know this is historically accurate. This actually happened, right? The witch trials and the witch burnings in Salem, Massachusetts, and other places in the early days of America, right? This is a topic that is very important that I'm going to make another video on, that Satan uses the zeal of people, which is a good thing, the zeal to please God, the zeal to protect your family, to stamp out evil, right? He can use that and have you doing satanic, evil, negative things. He'll do that. He'll use the good in you and make you do evil with it, right? And that's what we saw in the Salem witch trials and the witch burnings in general that happened all over the world, right? Specifically in America. So that's what you had here. You had this this group of people. Now, here's the interesting thing that the movie showed, and this is a reality. There were witches, right? There was witchcraft being practiced. People were ending up dead, right, with the marks of the devil, which was the vampire bites, right? So obviously they have the vampire theme in the movie, which is also something that may be true, right? That the Book of Enoch talks about the Nephilim. So vampires could just be Nephilim creatures, right? It's told in history over and over again that they make a contract with the devil. They're undead, right? They sell their soul to the devil, and then they can walk the earth and they have to feed on human blood. So they were finding people dead, and they started to want to stamp out the evil. They wanted to protect their family. Okay, that's natural. But they went about it in all the wrong way. They started burning these innocent girls. Okay? Now, maybe some of them were practicing witchcraft. Still, Christians are not supposed to kill people, right? Now, self-defense, that's one thing. If somebody's coming to your house, coming actually at your family, and you defend them, that's one thing. I think most people would agree that that's okay. But going out and harming others and killing others and calling that protection, debatable. Especially when you don't know, right? The trials were wonky, the ways, right? You see that Monty Python movie, The Holy Grail, where they had these weird tests for these women, right? If she floats, then she's a witch, right? She's made out of wood, you know? Or if she weighs less than a duck, you know, something like that. You know, obviously that's making fun of it, but now there were books written in the 1600s about how to identify a witch and how to get rid of them. So this was a serious topic in the Christian community. I don't think the witch burning was a good thing. I think it's a blight on our history, but I think we should learn from it. And there's modern witch burning, which generally doesn't end in physical death, right? But I've seen people get kicked out of churches because somebody saw in the spirit that God told them that they were a witch. Yeah, Pastor Greg Locke. That's what happened in his church. So I don't agree with that either. Right? But you had these people and they were burning these witches. Or burning these women, sorry. We don't know if they were witches or not. So that was one theme of the movie. Now the other theme, the main witch burner, he had two nieces who come and live with him. They were identical twins. They're actual identical twins, the actresses. They come and live with them. It has been maybe 2 months since their parents died, and now they were wearing black for 2 months, and now they're dressed how they want to dress. Like nice dresses with like a flower in their hair. And he chastises them. And the mother is telling them, oh, you know, the way you guys are dressed, your uncle's not going to like it because he's very religious. Now, you have two personalities in these identical twins. This is really interesting. They showed a Christian girl with a Christian personality, so to say. And they showed the satanic girl who eventually gives herself to the Count, who's kind of the Count Dracula figure, and becomes a vampire. Right off the bat, you see the difference between these two. You see the good nature of the Christian girl, although she's not perfect, right? But she desires to do good more than she desires to do evil, right? The aunt is telling her things, hey, you should respect your uncle, and she's like submitting. She's following the 5th commandment. They mistakenly say it's the 4th commandment, right? Honor your father and mother is the 5th commandment, but in the Catholic commandments, they took out the 2nd one, which says do not bow to idols, do not make them. They took it out because the black one, they had to split the 10th into 2. Because they take it out, all of them, right, get out of order. So where it should be the 4th commandment, the 5th commandment, it's not the 4th. So, you know, she has this good nature, and even though she realizes like the uncle is abusive, she's like, well, he's doing his best, right? He's a man of God. He wants to help others. He's trying to help us, so we should be good. And she's meek and she's humble, right? Like that. These are Christian qualities that when you have the Holy Spirit, these are fruits of the Spirit. This manifests in your life. Whereas the other girl is focused on the negative. She's like, I don't care about this uncle. I'm not going to listen to him. I'm not going to do it. If he tries to touch me, I'm going to kill him, she says later on. Right? And when the sister says he's a man of God, she says, yeah, I know men of God. Do you know what they do? Do you know what he would like to do to us? Right? Indicating, some nefarious things. And you know what? She's right. She's partially right. That does happen. Right? Men of God do bad things. Just because you're a Christian, or you profess it, doesn't mean that sin isn't there, right? So she's kind of hardened in her heart about religious people and what they do. Oh, yes, he's a man of God. So what? That means I should trust him? So there's wisdom in there, right? But the Christian girl, the innocent one, she's innocent, and she's like, well, we should still respect him, right? No, I'm not going to think that about my uncle. No, he's a good man, and he didn't do that, right? So the girl who's led by Satan, essentially, before she gives herself over to Satan, she's led by her desires, her will, right? This is the old story that we see, right? Cain and Abel, right? Esau and Jacob. Are you looking to do your will mostly? Because we all do our will on some level, right? When Jacob tricked his father to get the birthright, actually when he tricked Esau, right? And then tricked his father, right? He was acting out of his will. That was satanic, right? God forgive me if that's the wrong thing to say, but from my understanding, right? If you're acting selfishly, that's evil. Evil means to follow the devil, right? To follow your self-will, not to do God's will. We all do it, right? So in this movie, you can see that the good person, the good Christian girl, because she wears a cross and she believes in God and she believes in Jesus, she's not perfect. She still has fallings, but she's like mainly in good character. The other one is mainly in bad character, but she also has the desire to do good. She desires to be honest with her sister. She starts to tell her like where she's going at night and explain why she wants to go. And then she stops. She says, just stop asking questions, right? Because that other nature starts to take over. She realizes that it's probably not smart to go hang out with this Count Dracula dude in the middle of the night, who everybody says is evil when there's dead bodies showing up. But she can't deny her desires, right? Her selfish desires, those kind of come first and rule her life. So that's the two natures, right? Now also, you have this awesome scene where, the good Christian sister is pleading with her, please don't go out there and don't see him. And she says, no, stop talking, right? I don't care how many times you tell me, I'm gonna go, right? And then she ends up threatening her. And if you tell, I'm gonna harm you, right? That's that satanic nature coming out. But another key here, theologically, is free will. That's right. No matter how much you tell me, I'm gonna go, she says. That's true. That's true with believers in our life, our parents, God himself, right? That's what happened with Lucifer. Lucifer said, I want to do this. God said, okay, go ahead. He allows for it. So this girl who has that selfish desire stuff and eventually goes to this count's castle is acting out her free will. And it was a bad choice, as the Christian girl told her. She warned her, and it was true. The girl eventually became a vampire, right? And she got bit on the neck and became undead like that. Now, the Count was telling her, if a vampire bites a Christian, a good person, right? Because we're only good by Christ living in us. They just die, right? But if a bad person gets bit by a vampire, they don't die, they become undead. They become one of them. So that was an interesting thing as well. There's a difference, right? Because spiritually speaking, when you have the Holy Spirit, things interact with you differently, right? Now, Christians can be affected by demons, yes, and we can have demonic experiences, especially if you're dabbling in their area. But I heard a story of a guy who just got saved when he was in college. This is an amazing story. He goes to a party and they're playing with a Ouija board. As soon as he walks in, the Ouija board stops working. Before that, it was moving all around. When he leaves, he found out later, the spirit spelled out, when he left, we had to stop. A child of God was in the room. The spirits know what's up. The demons know. They know the rules that God has set. And they have to follow it, right? There's another awesome story by this guy Ramirez, can't remember his first name right now, but he was a Santeria practicer. And it's the same thing. He used to do Santeria and try to kill people, and he was able to commit murders in the spirit realm, do curses on them, etc., and kill them. But when he tried to do it to a Christian, the demons, and actually Satan himself told him, don't harm her, you can't harm her, you can try all you want, but it's not going to work, because the God that she serves is greater than me. That's what Satan told a Satanist to his face, which confused him. He said, I thought you were the greater. No. Satan has to admit, he has to be truthful in those areas. It's true, right? And he's telling you. And when you make your free will decision, you get to decide, which God do you want to serve? So the count was completely satanic, and there's actually this crazy satanic ritual scene in the movie, which I suggest you mute if you're watching this movie, because it is in Latin and it seems to be a legit, prayer to him, and we don't want to bring that into our realm. That's my view. So I have it on mute. I'm reading the subtitles about just what the dialogue is saying to follow the story. So you had that also exposed in the movie, the Illuminati, because the Count is very rich. He looks down on the poor people, and he lives in this, humongous, beautiful castle. And he has all these Illuminati symbols all around his house. He has a two-headed bird, right? The out of chaos comes order symbol, right? And all these, he has two goat head beings, right? And he's doing sacrifices. He's doing human sacrifices. This was exposing this stuff way before Eyes Wide Shut came out. So you have these two natures, the Christian girl and the evil girl, right? And eventually, the Christian girl, they're about to burn her at the stake because the devil switches them out. And she humbly goes to the stake to be burned, which reminded me of the Christian martyrs, who willingly and humbly went to their own death, just like Jesus did. Sometimes holding the very instruments of their death like Christ did, right? He held the cross, which eventually would lead to his demise. Similarly, right? When Abraham took his son up on the mountain, he held the wood on his back that eventually he would burn on, would be the instrument of his demise. A picture of Jesus Christ, the only son, right? He was the only son of Abraham. He was about to sacrifice his only son, just like a picture of God and the son of Jesus Christ. So you have these two girls. Their names were Frida and Maria. Frida was the one who went into the evil way, right? And Maria was the Christian girl. So they're about to burn her, and it was a school teacher who shows up, who was her teacher, and says, that's Maria, you're burning the wrong girl, you fools, right? Now this teacher was an interesting character because he wasn't necessarily a believer. He was more of like an atheistic, agnostic kind of thinker, but he was very smart. And he was like, religion doesn't help. Look at these guys, they're burning these innocent girls, right? They don't go after the Count because it might get back to them and they might get in trouble. And they're big and bad, but they kill these innocent girls in the middle of the night. It's horrible. He's right. He was criticizing Christianity for something that was legitimately horrible. He ends up being the hero, in a sense, in the movie, which was a really cool topic. You find out later that he actually is a Christian. He has ideas of faith. He knows about Christianity. He says, this isn't really Christian. We as Christians should do this thing, right? There was another part where the Count, when the main witch hunter was trying to kill him, he said, this isn't Christian, right? And then he says, pray for me. The guy's running away and he goes, pray for me. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Pray for me. He's 100% right. The Bible says to pray for these people. It doesn't say go out and kill them, right? Pray for them. What else are you going to do? That was another thing in the movie. The guy, the witch hunter, he was obsessed with the sin of the world. Oh my God, they're doing this now. Oh my God, we need to stamp it out. That's modern day Christian nationalism. oh my God, the gays, oh my God, the trans, oh my God, well, we need to pass laws and put these people in jail and prevent them from doing whatever they want with their body, even though they have free will, even though God gives them that free will. Right? This obsession with the outside world and their sins. When Paul tells me what business is of mine, what they do, the outside world. Don't judge them, he says. Judge yourselves, judge the church. This witch burner, I don't see him judging himself very much. Right? So he says, hey, that's Maria, the good girl, so show her the cross and see if she flinches. And he says, me too, show us both the cross. They show her the cross and she says, my God, my God. All she could think about was God even while she was about to be burned. Right? So he saved the day. Now, the other thing which was really cool in the movie was the aunt was protecting the girls from the abusive uncle, the guy who was burning witches. When he found out that Frida was the vampire girl, because they actually found her in the woods, feasting on a prey, right, on an innocent victim, right? Because these beautiful girls, these twins, the vampires, sometimes they take that form, right? Demons can take any form they want. They oftentimes in these accounts and these histories, right? Mythology doesn't necessarily mean a fake story. It doesn't mean fiction. It means something that has been talked about in cultures, varying cultures, like the same story in different cultures, over and over and over. They call it myth because modern science can't make sense of it, right? That's why they have to call it myth. They don't call it lie straight out. Recognize that. Even the Exodus, the Jews leaving Egypt, is called a myth in Wikipedia. I just learned that actually in my Messianic synagogue. They had a Passover Seder that I went to, and the rabbi talked about that. It says it's a myth, right? Because modern science can't admit some of these things. They can't outright say it's just fiction, because that would just be intellectually dishonest. They can't 100% say that it didn't happen, the Exodus, right? Or that these things don't exist in cultures. So they call them myths, because they don't have, proof, they think, although there is some proof, right? We have bodies of giants, we have humongous skulls of the Nephilim creatures, etc., right? So this uncle is going to go upstairs and deal with Frida, but the aunt saves her, and she stands in front. She says, I'm not going to let you touch Maria. She says, Frida, yes, she might be a devil. She might be giving herself over, and she's a vampire now. Yes, I can see that. But Maria's a good girl. She's a Christian, and I'm not going to let you harm her, right? What are you going to do to her, right? You're going to beat the devil out of her, right? She says, and he says, yeah, I am, right? Frida. And he says, yeah, I am going to beat the devil out of her. And maybe she needs that, right? And what does the aunt say? Very interesting what she says here. She says, did you ever think that maybe you beat the devil into her? Wow, what a deep concept for a horror movie. This is what I'm talking about. Child abuse is another topic that they address in horror movies that isn't addressed in any other genre. Isn't that an interesting concept? And what is his response? Children need to be chastised. Again, that verse from the Bible that I feel is probably one of the most misused in the Bible, right? Spare the rod, spoil the child. The rod of what? Correction? The rod of beating, of abuse? No. The rod of guiding. So people misuse that verse and say, oh, that means I have to beat my children. What? I mean, they used to beat infants because the modern books of child rearing in Germany, right before Hitler came to power, told people to beat the devil out of their infants when they cried. That's what they said. If the infant is crying, it's a selfish desire, it's sinful, it's the devil. Beat it. So in Germany, right before, when Hitler was a child, they were beating infants when they cried. Yeah. That's beating the devil into your child. You're literally creating a sociopath. If a child doesn't experience any love, tenderness, empathy, they will become sociopathic. Why? Because they didn't learn empathy. They didn't learn feelings for others. That's the definition of a sociopath. They don't have feelings for others. They feel nothing. That's why they can be killers, because they feel absolutely nothing. They don't empathize. They don't have any feelings. They're numb. So killing somebody is like, eating breakfast to them. That's why sometimes they show that in movies, that when somebody kills somebody, they go and eat in their house, right? Because it's like no big deal. They don't have that distinction where a normal person does. Why? Because most people were raised with empathy, right? So you understand these things. But if you don't have that, if all you've experienced is pain and suffering